okay, first of all, the idea that Conor McGregor thought it was awesome to even start talking shit to Floyd Mayweather was pretty interesting for the last like 2 years. But it was also like, that's not going to happen. Like this seems ridiculous. I mean, and as good of a fighter as Conor is, like, he's talking shit to like the best defensive boxer in history. So this idea that like even if like somehow the fight does happen, it's going to be, as great of a mixed martial arts fighter as Conor is, you're going to see the difference pretty quick. And yes, like okay, I'm totally going to admit this to you. Like when I saw like Conor standing in front of Floyd, I was like, God, he's a lot fucking bigger than Floyd, and maybe he can bully Floyd, and he's not going to box him the way like Canelo. Canelo was throwing bombs at Floyd, and Floyd was just
torpedoes.
Yeah, and I was just like, I don't think Conor's going to do that. I think Conor's going to use angles, and he's going to keep moving. And as the fight progressed, I was like, okay, first round, okay, clearly Conor. Second round, again, clearly Conor. Third, clearly Conor again. The fourth, you could say Conor took it, but it was debatable. And then as it got into like the fifth and the sixth, I was like, oh, so Floyd's just basically waiting for Conor to get tired. And that was this is the Achilles heel of Conor McGregor as a professional fighter, whether it's mixed martial arts or now making his pro boxing debut, is he has.
No, I mean, I get that on level. I don't think that's necessarily true. It's just boxing's a different.
It's different, but
animal. Like, and one of the most maddening things I heard after the fight was they had of course, they had Stephen A. Smith and Chael Sonnen and Teddy Atlas on ESPN, and Teddy of all people is going, well, Conor had to switch his game plan. I mean, Floyd rather had to switch his game plan. I'm sitting there going, what fight did you watch? Like, and I mean it even-handed on both levels. Like, from the fifth round on, Floyd progressively picked him apart.
Yeah.
Like, in the fourth round, it started to swing back, and Floyd started to, throw punches. By the fifth and sixth round, he started to find his setup punches and found his range. By the seventh round, Conor was gassed. Absolutely pool noodle leg gassed. And Floyd started to find his power shots. And the eighth, they started to land. In the ninth, Conor was probably lucky that he got out of the round. And the 10th, I mean, it was a disaster. I mean, I was part of me, and this is me having watched a lot of boxing, so I'll admit to a little bit of bias towards boxing just because I've got a history with it. But I was a little surprised, had this been a more polished corner that he had. I was a little surprised he answered the bell. Like, he was dead.
Yeah.
Coming into the 10th round, took two big shots, coming into the first 20 seconds of it, and then was dead. I mean, there's nothing behind his punches from round 5 on. And when we got to the 10th, there was no mustard behind him. He threw two haymakers, and Floyd just kind of patiently took his time, waited for Conor to present himself, which he did, and smashed him 4 or 5 times. And I mean, look, even if we say, this is the flip side of that. Like, even if we say, okay, well, Conor won the first 3 rounds, and we want to say that Floyd is setting that up. We're talking about the great, at least at the lower weights, outside of maybe Ray Robinson. Maybe. Floyd Mayweather's the best to ever put on boxing gloves. And Conor McGregor has 3 rounds over him.
Yeah.
In his life, having never fought a professional boxing fight. I don't care if Floyd was throwing them or not. Like, that's like me getting in there with a guy that throws 99 and fouling 6 pitches off. Like, the fact that I can just do that is an accomplishment in and of itself. And when it came around to the end of the fight and Floyd clearly had him out on his feet, the stoppage was perfect, because I thought that Conor accomplished everything that he needed to accomplish in that fight. He did everything he needed to do to bring significance to himself as an athlete and to the sport of MMA. And nobody's going to gain anything from Conor getting flatlined in front of millions of people.
No.
And it was happening. I mean,
and it was weird too, because people were kind of complaining about the stoppage, and I was like, well, he was getting fucked up. Like, even you were talking about the round before, really towards the end, Conor was describing it as fatigue, which is very clearly is what happened. But it was weird though, because like he gassed against Nate Diaz the second time again and weathered the storm. Like, Nate fucked him up against the cage, and he weathered the storm. And then the next round he came out and did completely better. So there was that moment where I was like, okay, he escaped the round, but I this isn't the first time I've seen Conor get, completely fatigued and fucked up like that. He usually comes back, but then, he had this like moment where he started really fast, and Goosey brought it up in the chat, where Floyd, during a lot of the rounds, Floyd turned his back to Conor, and
trying to get a point taken away.
He was trying to get a point taken away, and there was a lot of times where Conor was throwing shots that was getting close to the back of the head, hammer fists. He was holding when he was standing southpaw. He was putting one glove on top of Floyd's head with trying to judge distance, and then he was then trying to work in some body shots, and then eventually some trying to throw the left, which I thought he was doing a really good job. I guess here's what caught me by surprise was that for about 2 months, I heard Max Kellerman on First Take talk about how Conor McGregor would not land any sort of significant shot on Floyd Mayweather, that it was impossible. And in the first round, he lands this big fucking uppercut. And I was like, whoa. And I was even a little surprised. Now I thought Max Kellerman was kind of full of shit, because a lot of those guys that have been talking on ESPN are, their job is to have hot takes 5 days a week. So
yeah, Robin Black, though, he's not a hot take guy, and he had Conor knocking him out in 5 or 6. I just think you had competing commentators in a jousting competition.
It was weird.